Okay, bringing this home today is Santana Minerals. Santana Minerals, trading under the ASX code of SMI, with a market capitalisation of 236 million, is developing the Bendigo-Ophir project on the South Island of New Zealand, which features the 2.2 million ounce Rise and Shine gold project discovered in 21. The discovery is touted as the most significant gold discovery in New Zealand in 40 years. Presenting for the company today is Executive Director Sam Smith. Sam, great to have Santana on for the first time. Keen to hear out the story, and over to you.
Thanks, Paul. Great to be here today. You almost got the name of the project right. It's Bendigo-Ophir. The Kiwis are quite particular about how it's pronounced, but the Bendigo is a direct correlation to the Victorian Bendigo goldfields, because the area that we're exploring and the project we're developing has a history of gold mining exploration, which makes it amenable to the locals who want to see this project get up and running. So again, thanks for having me here today. All eyes on Rise and Shine is what I've called this presentation, because it certainly feels that way as we put this discovery on the map. And yes, we raised some eyebrows in January when we put a presentation out with that title, but it is the most significant single gold discovery in New Zealand in 40 years. And our share price started to take off as the investment community realised what we have here in New Zealand. So I'll step you through what I'm going to talk to you today about. I'm going to keep it pretty sharp, but I just want to tell you about the geometry and the shape of this deposit, which makes it quite unique, easy to discover, define and recover. And also want to talk to you about the outcome of a recent scoping study that we released in April, which showed some stellar numbers associated with the development potentially of this project. So next slide, please. We'll get through. Oh, look, just a quick company snapshot. The takeaway from this slide is the team. We have a highly experienced board. Some of you will be familiar with Peter Cook, who developed a company called Westgold and Metals X, another tin miner from Tasmania. So Peter came on board in October last year. I followed along with Peter. We'd just actually exited a company called Breaker Resources that merged with Ramelius Resources. So we came on board around the same time. Damien Spring, our CEO, who lives about half an hour from the project, is a New Zealand, a highly experienced mining engineer with a history of permitting projects in New Zealand. We'll get to that at the end of the presentation, because that's a big question that's going around at the moment in New Zealand. And Kim Bunting, the founder of our Rise and Shine discovery, we call it RAS, and the vendor of the project into Santana in 2020. So Damien has rounded out a team of professionals to progress the study phase. Again, we released the scoping study. We're in PFS mode right now. So that's Rod Redden, Hamish McLaughlin, and Mary Askey, who are all responsible for the study process and really permitting this project. Our market cap at the moment is about 240 million. Certainly shows that the investment community believes this project is a real project and will become a mine. Companies with similar resources to ours who are in production at the moment have market caps of 1.5 billion. There's a few analogues out there. So if we're in production today, and when we do get into production, all things being equal, there's a lot of value to go in this company. So what else is important here? We did a cap raise earlier this month. We have $35 million in the bank, which will take us right through to a mining decision in about 12 months' time once we get through our PFS and DFS. And then just the major shareholders there, Regal Funds with 10%, Kim Bunting, the founder, who's there with 6.6%, board and management. You can see the rest. We'll flick to the next slide. Thanks, Paul. So I'm going to locate you after this slide. I just want to talk about the suite of discoveries that we have. So the main event there is Rise and Shine. We call it RAS. So the RAS discovery has 2.2 million ounces at 2.2 grams per tonne of gold. But there are 3 other satellite deposits, much lower grade and fewer ounces associated with it, but it might become important for early feedstock into the plant as we get going. But globally, 2.46 million ounces at 2.1 grams per tonne, so a good healthy grade there as well, and plenty of ounces to process. The image on the right-hand side just shows the location. If you look at the inset map in the bottom right-hand corner, So the larger graphic represents about 15% of our tenure. So there's still plenty more to explore, which will be the discovery upside associated with this company. But you can see, it might not come up on your screens there, and I'll show it on a different slide, but essentially we're in a geological setting with two schists, the Central Otago schists. At the contact of the Thompson Gorge Fault is where the discoveries have been made. And so all of the discoveries so far have been found in the Rise and Shine Valley and have been extended below the TZ3 schist system, which I'll show you in a different slide. So moving on. So in terms of location, bottom left-hand corner of the graphic, you see the map of New Zealand. We're on the south of the South Island in the Central Otago Plains. We are 1 hour east of Queenstown, where there's an international airport. So I've got a slide in 1 or 2 slides' time that just shows that we are in an area that's blessed with infrastructure and a labour source. So coming from Western Australia and being associated with the gold projects over here, where you have to mobilise everything to a remote location, it's already there. And so that's a really important piece that I'd like to stick in investors' minds as we leave this presentation at the end, that and the output of the scoping study financially, you see that we have a really low cost of gold production, and that's part of the reason that everything's right around our project. I'll show you more details soon. It's in a semi-arid environment, about 450 mils of rain per annum. That's about half of what we get here in Perth, where I'm sitting. So fairly dry, arid terrain, but plenty of water around. And you can see the important takeaway from that image there on the right-hand side, the Macraes gold mine. So Oceana Gold have been mining at Macraes for well over 30 years, and there's a strong analogue between our discovery and what they've been able to achieve down there. So we hope that, albeit our initial scoping study shows a mine life of 10 years, we hope to be mining where we are for over 30 years as well. In the same geological setting, in the Otago schists, I'll talk to you a bit more about that later, but that's important. The location and proximity to Oceana Gold is important just because it's an area that's now familiar with mining. They've been a beneficiary of that project for over 30 years. So it's a mining-friendly location. We might as well move on. I'll talk maybe a bit more about that later. On the other map that we just left, you saw the town of Cromwell. I mentioned that it's blessed with infrastructure. So let me stay on this slide for a moment, because it took a while for this to resonate with me. Once I became involved in the project, I was more focused on the geometry, the grade, how are we going to mine it. I have a mining engineering background. But from the cost profile, after going there a couple of times, and it was Peter Cook who had mentioned it to me, but it took a while to resonate. And that's why I put this slide in here, because I'd like this to resonate immediately with potential investors. Our project, you can see the badge on the top right-hand corner of that graphic, where we're located. If you sort of pan across to where the town of Cromwell is, with 8,000 people who are all crying out for better paid jobs. I've been there a few times and spoken to some of the locals. The drive from Cromwell, and it's a beautiful location, to the mine gate is about 15 minutes. So we're not dealing with FIFO camps and people having to fly 2 hours and then catch a bus for an hour just to get to work. People will be able to stay in their own beds at night, coming largely from Cromwell and a couple of other towns that are proximal to the project. We have access to fresh water from Lake Dunstan, so no hypersaline waters hunting around for water in the arid areas of Western Australia. Access to the fresh water at Lake Dunstan, which is important for processing. Bitumen State 8 highway straight to the mine. I'm laughing because I've been associated with projects where companies have spent $40 million on access roads into their site. Ours is already there. Access to low-cost energy. You see the badge on the bottom of the graphic there. We've got the Clyde Dam hydro power scheme proximal to the site, so we'll have access to cheap power as well, and green energy too, which is a good part of the story. And again, all very close to an international airport at Queenstown. So no FIFO, no major camps, and none of the headaches associated with having to bring all this stuff to site. Next slide, thank you. So the RAS deposit, which is the jewel in the crown and the main event on our property, the geometry, we're looking at a plan view here. So you can see that it's 1.7 kilometres down plunge so far. It's open at depth, but that's how far we've traced it at the moment. The mineralized zone is about 450 meters wide. However, the high grade core, and that's what we're going to concentrate on for mining, is about 150 meters wide. And most importantly, and this really resonated with me, pertinent to my past experience, the thickness of this thing is up to 40 meters. And I'm going to show you some cross sections. This is the first thing I looked at when I became involved with the company. Show me the quality of this ore body and the continuity, which is important once you start mining. So in that image there, you can see the dotted line that goes sort of nearly vertical. That's the long section that I'm going to show you. And then cross section A, B, and C, we're going to turn it 90 degrees. I'm going to show you a cross section through the ore body in the next few slides so that you can see the thickness and the continuity. And again, 2.2 million ounces at 2.2 grams per tonne in this deposit. So let's flick to the next slide. So there's the long section, and you can see that, well, actually just a little bit on the geology, the light grey material at the top is the TZ3 schist rock. Ironically, that is where all of the Macraes mineralisation is hosted. For us, it's completely barren. Ours is all in the TZ4 schist rock, depicted in the darker grey. And just a little bit on the discovery story. To the right-hand side of that image, there's a valley, the Rise and Shine Valley. That's where our founding director, Kim Bunting, or the vendor of the project rather, was prospecting with ambitions of developing a lower grade heap leach project until through the recap of that project into the Santana Shell in 2020, they raised some money and started drilling through that barren TZ3 cover. And ironically, going in the other direction for where the old timers were prospecting, they were sort of heading further to the south. He drilled north took a risk, drilled through that barren cover, discovered Rise and Shine, and every time they've stepped out, as you can see, going down plunge, they keep hitting that deposit with similar thicknesses, which I'll show you in the next slide. So 1.7 kilometers so far. Next slide, thank you. So we turn it 90 degrees at cross section A. If you remember back from that plan, that bird's eye view, cross section A, you're getting intercepts of 40 meters at over 10 grams per tonne, 40 meters at 4 grams per tonne, 23 at 2.3. You step 200 meters to the north on cross section B. If you flick slides there, thanks, Paul. And you can see it's still there. Nearly 30 meters at 7 grams per tonne, 18 at 8. 200 meters to the north, flicking again over slide, thanks, Paul. And it's still there, and you're still getting thicknesses of 40 meters at 2.4 grams per tonne. So what we're looking at is a thick tabular ore body with a high degree of continuity, which just makes it easy for recovery. You can put an excavator on it. Because it's so thick, it doesn't dilute. You're not trying to selectively mine out skinny sections of an ore body. And that's what's got everybody quite excited about this project. Hence a significant discovery in New Zealand. Next slide. Of course, all of this is only important if you can liberate the gold out of the ore. We've done 6 phases of met testing, and we're looking at recoveries from gravity and cyanide leach of somewhere between 91 and 94%. So in our scoping study, we selected 93%. I'll talk to you about the numbers in the next couple of slides. But essentially no surprises in the network. Low reagent consumption, moderate to hard bond work index, but power's cheap, so that's not going to be a burden for us. Most of the gold's liberated after 8 hours. But yeah, we're looking at the recoveries in the sort of low to mid 90%. Next slide, thanks. So we released a scoping study in April. You can see more detail on that. I've presented a truncated version for this purpose here, but feel free to go onto our platform and look at some more detail. But essentially, we chose a 1.5 million tonne per annum plant. We felt that was the right size for the volumes would be pulling out of the pit and from underground. Sort of need to be cognizant of what it looks like in the future as well. So usually a bit of a restriction on volumes coming from an underground mine as opposed to an open cut mine. And the result was an open pit that lasted 8 years and an underground that went for 4 years. We did have to cut off the mine life because some of the material deeper was still in the inferred category. 84% of the material going through our scoping study was indicated, and only the balance of inferred was as a consequence of mining the indicated. But deeper in the deposit, where it's all indicated, we had to chop it off, and that's an objective, subjective view of the ASX. So really, there's a version of this that's on my desk that's a 14-year mine life, but we've publicised the 10 years to get going, and the numbers are stellar as an output, which we'll look at next. But we're recovering over 1 million ounces out of that 10-year mine, and we think it's just the beginning, even just at Rise and Shine at RAS, let alone the other satellite deposits and whatever else we can prove up and discover in the interim. So next page, thank you. So the outcome of the scoping study, a life of mine, as mentioned, of an initial 10 years, and that's important. As I said, there's a life deeper underground. We just need to get that inferred material into indicated, and we think we're going to do that pretty easily because you can see the continuity. It just doesn't stop. It's tabular. Producing 110,000 ounces per annum, which is nice to be able to tick that box. The question always comes from the investment community, is it going to be over 100,000 ounces per annum? Yes. Recovering over 1 million ounces of gold. The project makes, by the way, the way that we did the scoping study in terms of the optimization and the projection of financials, we optimized the pits to define the inventory, the mineable inventory in the open pit and the underground at 1,650 per ounce US. So a really conservative take on the amount that we could mine. And then we projected the financials in the spot gold price and we presented them in New Zealand dollars. Very, very close conversion to Australian dollars. And we did that at 3,900 an ounce Kiwi. And I think that's about where it is today, probably even a bit more because gold obviously has had a run. So this project, based on those numbers and that methodology, makes $2 billion of net profit after tax. And these are all after tax numbers as well. So we're not sort of playing any games with pre-tax numbers. The one square that's missing off here before I go through the other numbers is actually the contribution to the New Zealand government. So this will punch in nearly $900 million of taxes and royalties to the New Zealand government, which will be really important for our permitting piece, and that's what we're going through at the moment. Essentially nearly $1 billion NPV and producing gold at a really low operating cost of $897 per ounce. Once you add in the capital cost, it's $1,392 per ounce. So a low-cost operation that pays itself back a year into production, and $4 billion worth of revenue. The capex at $256 million. Have a dive into our scoping study. 100 of that is a pre-strip that we need to do. This project was always going to carry a pre-strip. You saw that this deposit is under the TZ3. That needs to come off first. And the remainder is plant capital, process plant, and then establishment costs. And again, there's a detailed breakdown in the scoping study that's on the platform. Next slide. Thanks, Paul. In terms of the upside after RAS, the discovery upside, I gave you a glimpse into this before. So there's 3 other satellite deposits. We have our gold is associated with arsenic. Arsenic soil anomalies right down that Thompson Gorge fault. There's a geophysics program in place right now to potentially light up repetitions of RAS down that fault line. The discoveries that we've got at the moment, again, are a lot smaller and lower grade, but there's a plan in place in the background while we're commercialising RAS to define why is RAS where it is, what put it there. And that'll be resolved through a geophysics program, and we'll define additional drill targets on the back of any anomalies or conductors from that exercise. Next slide, thank you. So permitting, have I still got some time left, Paul? I noticed that the time's ticking away. This is the last slide, but great. So the big question for any project in New Zealand at the moment is permitting. Now, I feel a bit fortuitous joining this company it was really December last year, but in November, and unbeknown to me, there was a change of government. And they've gone from a fairly conservative green government to a government that is absolutely emphatic about fast-tracking developments, and particularly in the resources space. So anybody that has any interest in an investment in a gold project, And if you like what you see with what we're sitting on, please, I urge you to have a look at Minister Shane Jones. If you can find any snippet, soundbite, there's a bit of video on him, of any of his presentations to Parliament about this fast track approvals bill that they're pushing through into legislation. It hasn't been done yet, but you'll see the emphatic language in which he uses to curry favour with his counterparts to get this fast track bill into legislation. So here's the way it works. Essentially, the RMA, or the Resource Management Act 1991, top right-hand corner of that table there, is the legislation use to permit mines at the moment. Our CEO, Damien Spring, has permitted 2 coal mines in New Zealand through the process under that existing act. But the government want to fast-track developments that potentially provide economic benefit to New Zealand, so that the permitting process, which arbitrarily could have been between 12 and 18 months, is brought down to a 6-month process. So this in March this year, the first reading was had in Parliament by the Coalition to introduce a fast-track bill. They're now running around doing 2 things: getting public comment and comment from industry, and also qualifying a short list of projects. They call them projects of national significance that will appear on a short list. They call it Schedule 2A in the bill itself. And those projects will have, first rights eligibility to receive the fast track process, permitting process. So we hope that we feature on that list. There's still a little bit opaque as to how the process will play out, but the government's timeline is to have this bill passed in October this year, which is exactly the same time that we'll finish our PFS, which will be important as well, because we need that to get permitted, because it'll come with all of our environmental baseline studies. So in terms of catalyst for this company, and this is huge for us. I mean, we think we'll get permitted anyway, but we think this will bring it well inside 12 months. So come October this year, we'll be into our DFS. We'll be eligible for fast track permitting. Must be clear if this gets passed, and I believe it will. And we'll be sitting here in a year's time, Paul, talking about financing or a final investment decision. And we would have done a lot of the financing work in parallel, but we'll be sitting here next year pressing the button on getting going on this very exciting project. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. That was a super thorough presentation. I had a bunch of questions coming through. Some of these you've already answered in depth with your answers, but just regards to that how the importance of that fast track bill. Obviously you want to be included on that list. But going back to what you said about Cromwell being blessed with infrastructure, the jobs that you could bring to that town, these are all things that make your case to be on this list pretty good, yeah?
Yeah, well, the minister's been to site. Shane Jones has been to site. I was there with him. We've had a number of interactions. He needs to be a little bit careful. There's already some sensationalized journalist material coming out in New Zealand about, it's really the lunatic fringe green lobbyists trying to tear this away. The latest that I saw was he had lunch with somebody at one of the companies looking for the fast track, looking to get on that bill, on that schedule, and it wasn't diarised, so all of a sudden it's corruption. So he's very careful about how vocal he is in support of certain projects. But he's been to our project, and I guess I can tell you here verbally that he's very supportive. And I just don't really see any other project of this size and magnitude that can have that contribution to the the coffers in New Zealand. So I really think that we'll be the poster project. Part of the reason there's been a lot of press on Santana in New Zealand, you can have a look yourself. So yeah, over 200 jobs that should be generated from getting into development. And again, anecdotally, I've been to Cromwell a few times, and you talk to the locals there, in an area that's steeped in gold mining history, and they want better paying jobs. So yeah, indeed, I think this is a meaningful project for New Zealand moving forward, and it's the right time. We're advanced, we're well defined, and we're hitting that PFS DFS phase at the exact right time, pertinent to the fast track approvals bill.
So tell me, what are the key priorities for Santana in the next 12 months?
So the two key priorities is doing what we say we're going to do in the PFS. So that's really a timeline event and hitting that in September, and then getting on and getting our DFS done as soon as practically possible, which will probably be another 6 months. So they're the two major milestones. And again, in the background, we've got the geos working on that geophysics program.
And one here, to what extent do you expect the RAS resource number to grow, and why?
Oh, sorry, I missed that. The resource numbers.
Yeah, to what extent do you expect the RAS resource number to grow, and why?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so what I think, we've got a few holes planned to get the inferred material that was cut out of the mine plan. I think I can say this, by the ASX. So we were very careful about how we released the scoping study. We wanted it to be 100% compliant, so we tested it with them first. So that 4 years at the end of the mine plan that, as I said, we weren't able to release, so we've cut it back to 10. We want to get some of that into indicated category so it can factor into whatever we do next, and have a meaningful, could be part of our production target. Over and above that, the deposit starts to get pretty deep. You might remember a slide early on where it's sort of plunging underneath that TZ3, and the extension deep underground would be drilling through sort of 400 or 500 meters of waste material to hit it. So we'll probably reserve our cash and drill that from underground once we get going. So really, any increase will be more inferred into indicated, as opposed to an extension from the 2.2 million ounces becoming, anything more than that. I think, the main goal here is commercialize what we've got because it's massive, and then look for repetitions down the fault line as we increase the confidence on RAS.
Sam, it's been an absolute pleasure. As I said, first time we've had Santana Minerals on, clearly a very exciting project, and can't wait to get you back on and talk about the development and the progress you sounds to me that you're going to make. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Paul. Much appreciated.